FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to and perhaps even watching the Financial Survival Network on YouTube. I'm Kerry Lutz. Today is November 5th, 2020. 2 days after the election, no resolution in sight. But does it really matter? The person you're about to hear from, you will find out soon what his belief is. And, well, it's a real interesting time. We would like you to write us. The email address is kl@kerrylutz.com, and tell us what you think. Is the worst upon us, or is there more bad news to come? Right now, our good friend Darryl Schoon is with us. Darryl, it's great to have you back on the show as always. So we were talking pre-call and you were telling me your thoughts and you read something that was really interesting. Why don't you read that to us and then we can talk about it?
Okay. As background in my conversation with Kerry, I told him my focus on money began in 1992. All right. I had really never, I watched the markets. I was into gold, but it never caught my attention until these words came to me. It was 1991. In times of expansion, it is to the hare the prizes go. Quick, risk-taking, and bold, his qualities are exactly suited to the times. In periods of contraction, the tortoise is favored. Slow and conservative, quick only to retract his vulnerable head and neck, his is the wisest bet, when the slow and sure is preferable to the quick and easy. Every so often, however, there comes a time when neither the hare nor the tortoise is the victor. This is when both the bear and the bull have been vanquished, when the pastures upon which the bull once grazed are long gone, and the bear's lair itself lies buried deep beneath the rubble of economic collapse. This is the time of the vulture, for the vulture feeds neither upon the pastures of the bull nor the stored up wealth of the bear. The vulture feeds instead upon the blind ignorance and denial of the ostrich. The time of the vulture is at hand. As I told you before, Kerry, those words came to me, out of the blue in 1991. And I wrote them down, and it was spooky when it said, it's sort of like you're Noah, you've just started a family, and somehow a dream it said, get a boat, Noah, start building. And you're going, hey, we've had a drought for 3 years. What do you mean? This is what these words did to me. And that's when I began my study of money, all right? And the Great Depression specifically. So much so that in 2007, when my good friend from law school, he finished, I didn't, had a high-powered group of individuals together, $5,000 a year dues. We met 4 times a year, and we exchanged thoughts and made presentations, all right? And I presented this paper that I had written, all right, 148-page paper to the group, in which I predicted that an economic collapse was going to come, and it's called Time of the Vulture, all right? And they didn't like it. These people were very wealthy. Anybody who had spent $5,000 to go to this meeting 4 times a year had to have a lot of walking around money, all right? And some of them, one of them was already deeply into silver and gold. Most of these people were wealthy, and most of them had their money in real estate. And that I get up out of the blue and tell them that we're going to hell in a handbasket was not met with conceptivity. But what I said right before we went live, Kerry, was that one of the people who listened to it absolutely was opposed to what I said, talked to the guy who was into silver and gold, and started buying $10,000 worth of gold a month back in 2007. All right? Now, what I want to say is this. I presented this paper in March 2007. And I predicted an economic collapse we were going in over the abyss. And in 2008, markets cracked. This was known as the financial crisis of 2008. And people said, see, my prediction was correct. What I want to correct, though, is what I did predict. My prediction didn't happen in September 2008. It began. That began what we're about to experience next year. All right? Now, why? My study of credit and debt and how money is created by central banking, it's like steroids. Steroids work when you're in trouble, but eventually they'll kill you. All right? Well, lowering interest rates was the palliative that central bankers used to do whenever the economy slowed. That's like steroids. Boom. Okay? Well, what happened in 2008 was something that never had happened before except back in the Great Depression. It didn't recover. No interest rates, low interest rates didn't work. Nothing worked. So what they did in 2009 is they put us on a steady feed of steroids, all right? And QE, huge influx of capital. They never did this before. They never directly injected capital that went on their balance sheets. All they had to do is diddle with the credit, and it worked. It brought it back. But in 2009, they couldn't do it, and we've been pretty much on a steady diet ever since until COVID happened. Now, what did COVID really? Well, it's done a lot of things, but what it did economically was this. It was so spooky. This damn thing, you could get it from people who didn't even know they had it, and you could go and talk to your grandmother, and pretty soon she's dead, and everybody blames you, and you didn't even have a cough, Thanksgiving, they're looking at you, sure, you needed her.
I don't mean to be laughing.
Telling you were a deadbeat and you always went to grandma for money, but how are you to know? All right. But what happened is it was so spooky, the world shut down to try and stop it. Who would have thought a year ago, Kerry? But so everything stopped in its tracks. Boom, as much as it could. What happened, and this is because I know about credit and money. In a central banking economy, money is issued in the form of credit, all right? So it goes out there as credit. And that's why when you hear if every debt got repaid, money would disappear, that's true. Because money is issued from banks, only from banks, as debt. So if all the debts were repaid, money would disappear, except that central banks are always giving the banks more debt and money to create. But if everything got paid back, it would disappear. Now, what doesn't disappear when money doesn't disappear is the interest rate. All right. Most of those people at Deposit Union Network had leverage. They were in a position where they were liquid. All right. And most of those people had put their investments in, so they were arbitraging the interest rate over time, even. Real estate, that's all it is. It's an arbitrage. All right. The fact is, more money pumped into the economy, prices go up because it's inflation. It doesn't mean your house is worth more, but over time, if the plumbing didn't go bad and you're in a nice neighborhood, and people wanted to live there still, you went up. So without doing a thing, except paying the banker for 30 years, all right, and if you can get out in the middle and everything's going higher, you won, okay, because you arbitrage interest rates over time. Well, that works until it doesn't. It works until it doesn't, all right? And when it doesn't, Terry, it turns on you viciously, and especially when you've had no experience with it happening. What's happened now, we've never experienced it before, all right? Ever, ever, ever. The Fed has printed more money in the last 6 months than it did. I think somebody said it printed, this is a few months ago, it's printed in the last 6 months, 25% of all the money ever printed, all right? But because we know it just comes out of a printing press, there's no immediate consequence. It doesn't mean there won't be a long-term consequence, but it means there won't be a short-term consequence because we've disconnected money from anything of real value, which is almost consequence, all right? So they've gone, they're in emergency mode. Grandpa is in intensive care right now, all right? They wheel him out and he waves at us and we go, look, he's getting better. Well, he's getting better because he almost died. The fact that he's alive doesn't mean he's getting better.
Just because you have a pulse doesn't mean you're healthy.
Absolutely. So we're all hoping against hope that he's going to walk out of there. Kerry, this is what I'm saying. In 6 months, the reason why we're not thinking about the election is because what is called the time of the vulture is going to happen, all right? I mean, it's stunning that it's lasted this long, Kerry, and I know it because everybody who's into gold and silver is in there because we recognize there's a disconnect between value and money. And before, the only value money had was its value, all right? That's why gold and silver coins intrinsically had value, gold, silver, and copper. intrinsically had value and people passed it around. All right. The first coins that were done in China were all copper. All right. Gold and silver didn't circulate. The rich people had gold and silver. But for a circulating medium of exchange, it was all copper coins. All right. When they ran into a shortage of copper, some smart guy like me back then, goes, wow, well, let's make it out of lead. All right. So they were out of copper. So in Sichuan province, what is that, 1,000 years ago, they started making coins out of lead. Well, it took lead was so heavy, they couldn't carry it around. I mean, who would have thought, Kerry, they'd never done this before? This was out of the gate. And all of a sudden, they couldn't do it, so they started depositing their lead coins at money shops and get a receipt. So the receipt was money. What happened, Kerry, was they started passing around these receipts as like bills of exchange of money.
Yeah, it always happens that way. Every monetary system, it's been its downfall. These warehouse receipts.
Oh, absolutely. Because the guy who gave the receipt figured out he's printing the receipts, he could print his own. And that's what happened.
That's central banking in a nutshell.
Banking in a nutshell. So here we are in 2020. All right. This thing happened in Sichuan in 2024. 2024. That's about 1,000 years ago. All right. Before then, we never had paper money. All right. So we're on its 1,000-year anniversary. Kerry, what I think is this: money now is nothing more than a trading coupon. All right, that people have belief in. All right, and people are still passing it around, and that's why we're still floating. Okay, because it can come out of the blue. Now, all the hopes that many people had about saving the present system, I'm so cynical, and I never believed it could be saved. Never. Okay. In fact, I want to show you another book, Kerry. This one, I don't know if you ever heard of it, called The Great Wave. David Hackett Fisher. And I read this around 15 years ago. And he's an economic historian. And what he did was he said, we got receipts for everything since the beginning of time. He said, we know how much a bushel of grain costs in Judea, 1000 BC. All right. And we know if the price went down or up. We've got receipts. We've got receipts. So what he did was he noticed what he called waves of inflation. When they went up, went down, went up, went down. Okay, and he put this against civil epochs. All right, periods of time. All right, like the Middle Ages. All right, and what Fisher noted was that humanity has periods of stability. All right, but they're rare, but they do happen of stability. And these periods of stability are always inevitably interrupted by a rising wave of prices. All right. He calls these great waves, not little, but great waves, because it takes over a long period of time and its resolution is cataclysmic. All right. So what Fisher said was this: every period of humanity that we go through, all right, because we're only on this place for 70 years, 50, I've already overstayed my visit. All right.
Well, Darryl, if the COVID hasn't gotten you, you're probably going to be okay, because the average, I think the median mortality death age for COVID is 78, and the average life expectancy in the U.S. is 78. So these people were going to be gone anyway. They just didn't know it till COVID came along, right?
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
Today's show is brought to you by GR Silver Mining, ticker symbol TSX, GRSL, OTC, GRSLF, and their website at grsilvermining.com. The company is extremely well capitalized, currently has a resource of 40 million ounces of silver, and is looking to triple that number in just the next year alone. Its management team is first rate, headed up by Marcio Fonseca, a geologist with vast experience in mining operations and the financial sector as well. With all this going for it, and with silver trading over $25 the ounce, there's no telling how high GR Silver Mining will go. So go to grsilvermining.com to stay up to date on the latest developments and get on their notification list today.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Kerry, you're talking about me. I want to tell you a joke about this damn thing, because, when it first started happening, I'm reading it. We're all, what is this thing? All right. So I'm reading it. It says, this is the marker for mortality. The people who die, the great chance, male, Okay, I'm in the box. All right. Older, I'm in the box. Overweight, no, I'm not in the box. And then it said high blood pressure. I go, oh, that's good. I don't have high blood pressure. Carrie, the next week I went to the doctor, stick out my arm. They put that thing around it. They pump it up. And the nurse practitioner goes, Darryl, you've got high blood pressure. I go, no, I've never had high blood pressure. She says, let's do it again. Pumps it up. Carrie, I got high blood pressure.
Well,
1 week into this damn thing.
If you didn't have it before she told you that, you certainly had it after. Somebody telling you have high blood pressure is enough to raise your blood pressure.
Oh, it is. Now, I'm a firm believer in placebos. I should have a bottle of placebos in my cabinet. But what I'm saying, Kerry, is this. These little pieces of paper are nothing more than trading coupons, okay? But what we've done is this. We've printed so many trading coupons. In the last 6 months, there are going to be consequences. There are going to be consequences. Because what's happened is this, and it's not just from the money, but the economy, everybody owes money. We've got a daisy chain of credit and debt, Kerry. You know? I mean, if you've got a series of let's say you have some storage units, you know, that you live off of. You made an investment, 10 years ago, and your uncle, or you bought it from your uncle, and you have, 120 units out and wherever, all right? And they've been paying off. Well, all those people, most of them are going to run out of money. Some of them are, all right? And it's a daisy chain. It's a daisy chain of credit and debt. And what COVID did economically, it broke the chain. Now, what we've done since then in the intervening 7 months is we've thrown money at it, extra money to let people get through it. But you can't do this ad infinitum. So why I'm saying we're not going to be talking about the election in 6 months is I believe, Kerry, what I saw, with those words I heard about time of the vulture, they're going to come true in the next year. What I predicted started in 2008. What I think its resolution is going to be 2021, 22, 23. All right? Now, David Hackett Fisher said, these great waves of inflation come along every 160 years, 300 years. All right? He said the Middle Ages was flattened by a wave. The Renaissance came later. All right? Then the wave happened again. Age of Enlightenment came. Boom. Another wave. And it brought in what he called the Age of Victorian Instability. And I call that the age of modern banking. This was England. And this started in the 1800s. All right. And he wrote his book in 1997. And he said, in the next 80 years, we are going to see a resolution of what he has seen is the greatest wave in history. In other words, the culmination of these waves was always accompanied by natural disasters and wars and famine. All right. He said the wave that brought the Middle Ages to a resolution, it was accompanied by the Black Plague. The Black Plague. All right. The wave that brought the Age of Enlightenment to a resolution was the 100 Years' War. I mean, Kerry, the 100 Years' War. All right. So humanity, he said, has gone through these things. But he said in 1997, this wave is building in an intensity and a percentage of change that he calls it deep change. Deep change. All right. And he said, what happens is when you're caught up in it, before it happens, you are lulled by the success of where you were right before it happened. All right. And this is what I believe that the time of the vulture said. The vulture feeds neither upon the stored up wealth of the bear or the passions of the bull. The vulture feeds upon the blind denial of the ostrich. Now, Terry, you and I are part of a group that's watched money for the past 15 years. All right. Obsessively so.
Yeah.
All right. We've marginalized,
Yeah, I know.
No, I mean, people didn't listen, it didn't matter. And yet we've maintained our obsession with this belief that what we've discovered is consequential. All right. And I think you're as surprised as I am that it's lasted this long. I look at Japan. Japan cracked in 1990, Kerry. Their run up with the Nikkei went from, God, it went 4 times. It was huge when it blew up. They, and they went on life support, and they've been on life support for 40 years. And I'm wondering how long can it last? Well, the Central Bank of Japan already owns more than 50% of the shares on the stock exchange. So the plunge protection team coming in and buying our stock market, maybe the next thing they do, they already started buying our debt, IOUs, treasuries. They're directly buying treasuries. All right. And if they come in and maybe I think they are buying indexes in the stock, because that plunge protection team has been in place, for over 10 years. So they're already in it. And the palliative is determined by the extremity of the situation. So what I want to say is this. I've always ended my articles with 3 phrases: buy gold, buy silver, have faith. And this is what David Hackett Fisher said, that we always come out the other end, and the present civilization is always flattened economically, politically, institutionally, culturally, flattened. That he said that's the purpose of the Great Wave, is renewal. So, like it or not, we're here. Like it or not, buy gold, buy silver, and have faith to get through this, because we will. And maybe I won't, because I'm at the other end of my wick.
I'm not far behind you, Darryl. Hey, I've come up with a new term here that I think you're going to like.
Okay.
I've never seen it repeated elsewhere. I probably should trademark it. So if you're listening, there's a common law trademark on what I'm about to say.
Okay.
All right. You're going to love it. The cure is the disease.
You got it, Kerry. You got it. You got it. Because that's exactly what David Hackett Fisher said. He says these disasters, when you have the collapse of every major epoch, is always a collapse led by rising prices, which trigger the collapse of the economy, of the political institutions, of the religious institutions, and something new comes out of the dust of the old regime. Now, we all know that this old regime is basically a goner. That's why everybody's trying to figure out how to fix it, but it can't be fixed. Uh-huh. And your statement acknowledges that. The cure is it's fixing itself. We don't like the fix because it's painful.
Yeah, we don't like pain. We will do way more. We'll do way more to avoid pain than to embrace pleasure. One other thing, the Chinese are great for this because they invented inflation, basically, in terms of paper money.
Invented pain. I'm Chinese, so I know it.
But they invented paper money. Marco called it flying money.
Flying money.
Yeah, because no sooner you got it in your hands, it would fly out because it was worthless. And the point is, like, I was in China 3 years ago, and I'm talking to a guy in the city of Wuhan, which is a major. They have this huge market. It's 6 kilometers long, and it's 4 stories or 5 stories tall. Largest general goods wholesale market in the world. And this guy's cleaning up. He's driving a BMW that here costs $30,000, that in China cost $100,000.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to him like, "Hey, do you own gold?" And he looks at me like I'm from another planet. He says, "No, real estate. That's where the money is made, in real estate." And I said, like, your own government is telling you to buy gold. You don't believe them? He didn't know anything about it. And I was in a state of complete shock because I'm thinking the Chinese are so much more knowledgeable. They've got, thousands of years of world history behind them. Surely, and all we hear about is how the Chinese bank is buying, central banks buying gold.
Yeah.
None of the people are buying gold because they just think the good times are going to last forever, Darryl. I was in shock.
Kerry, your understanding is really fascinating because the Chinese have an unhealthy obsession with real estate. They really do. All right. And so what the communist regime has done is made sure that they can't make money any other way, virtually except by speculation in real estate. And so they've created the largest real estate bubble on the face of the earth. Okay. I remember when Professor Fekete went to China in I think 2011. All right. And here he was, he wanted to tell the Chinese echelon that they should not, because the boys at the top are always into gold. It's the people at the bottom that have no way. But the people at the top are always into gold. I don't care if it's in communist or capitalist countries. Those fuckers are into gold. All right. That's the ideology of the rich. The people at the bottom are scrambling. All right. So here's Antal over there in China telling them why it's going to collapse. Well, these guys are only 30 years out of the gate into the great new world of printed money. They had tragedy after tragedy after tragedy, and all of a sudden there's Porsches and BMWs. They were nasty to Antal.
Yeah.
I mean, they were not polite to him. And because when you're not in the mood to hear, you don't. But Kerry, what the Time of the Vulture said was this: that this time is going to feed on the ostrich, blind denial and ignorance. All right. And we all know it's out there. This guy in China was an ostrich because of his circumstance and his belief system. We are going to see the ostriches, and sticking their head in the sand is not going to work in a year.
Hey, it's such a great point, and it's such a great metaphor for the general public out there, not just in the U.S., which has been dumbed down beyond all belief, all over the world. All over. And you and I have seen this thing coming for decades already.
Yeah.
It's like we're in Indonesia and the water is going out. The water is going out of the beach. There's no water on the beach. How can this be? And some of us realize, hey,
listen, there's an earthquake, and you know it's going to happen.
Yeah, you better get out because there's a tsunami coming, and nobody's listening. I think more and more people are listening now, and all the instability that we see in our society, in our political system, in the global political system, everything, the wars breaking out, it's all as a result of this instability, this wave.
Underlying instability.
Yeah, and it's like you're a kid on the beach and you know the tsunami's coming, so you're going to dig a sandcastle thinking that that's going to protect you, right?
You know, when I started writing out on the internet, when I got my reputation, it's interesting the people who are out there. And this guy writes me, Kerry, I never forgot his name, is Les Halliday, all right? And this guy had his cave, all right? This guy had his hydroponics. Now, he may have been hit by a car after this happened, but he had bought high water boots because he figured when it all falls apart, it's not going to happen. You're not going to be able to get boots like this, all right? So he's prepared. You talk about a prepper. Les was prepared. But he got contacted me because I had made a remark in one of my articles. And I asked the question, do you think, he said, I'm wondering, before Mount Vesuvius went up in Pompeii and buried the city of Pompeii, did anybody leave when it started, the first smoke started coming out? Who left? Who heeded the warning signs? And Les wrote me, and he said, one of the, writers, the ancient Roman Greek writers said 5% listened and left. And Les came up with the 5% rule. And his rule was this: if you have no direct experience, personal experience of a disaster in your lifetime, or especially the lifetime before you, where you can hear it from somebody, it exists as something that never happened. And he said, so when the possibility of a like disaster is introduced to you, there's a 95% chance of disbelief or you'll do nothing. And this is where we are. We have never had a collapse like this since the 1930s. We've never had, and even the collapse in the 1930s was not like this. This is a culmination of 200 years of credit and debt, Kerry. 300 years of credit and debt.
Okay. And as you know, as a student of history, the one thing we learned from history, and I was making this point with my friend from China there, the one thing we learned from history is that we don't learn from history, right?
Kerry, one of my little sayings is this: until humanity changes, history will not. That's what you were saying too. Until humanity changes, history will not. And I want to say something about humanity. We learn the hard way, if we learn at all.
Hey, well, and this is life too. I don't want to wax too philosophical here, but the only way you can become a success in life, other than inheriting the money, and then you could wind up like Hunter Biden, it doesn't really do you any good. The only way to become a success.
Parents' money and everybody's giving you dirty looks at Thanksgiving.
Right. The only way to become a success is to become a failure. All right. You cannot succeed without failure. Failure to success is like Catholicism with the devil. You could not have Catholicism if you didn't have the devil. Yeah,
absolutely. Failure is the failure is the whetstone of success.
So true. And you know, I wrote a story a while ago during the like 2011, 12, when I got started in this, A Tale of Two Families. And my one grandfather lost everything in the Depression and never got back again. And he was a broken man. My other grandfather, he was out of work for like 6 months. Then the WPA project started. He had a reputation for honesty and being able to bring projects in under budget, ahead of schedule. They needed guys like that. So the other projects that they were fleecing, nobody would notice. And he made a fortune during the Great Depression. And my wife, my mother and my grandmother were wearing fur coats and had diamonds on their fingers.
Harry, this is what it is. I believe that if you sort of keep the faith through this, don't lose your head, because I mean, there are going to be opportunity upon opportunity to lose your head. But I firmly believe, after the vicissitudes of my 75 years on this planet and going up and down myself, that if you keep your head clear and don't get sucked into the up and down, you will be able not to get sucked into not to fall into the abyss, and you will be able to see the paths that are in front of you to succeed. And that's why we've been led to gold and silver. We knew this before it happened, Gary, because of our I mean, I didn't ask for that download, those words about the time of the vulture. I think it was just part of my life. All right. I mean, that's how fatalistic I am. And here I am 30 years later talking about it's happening.
It sure is. And this could easily be the end times prophesized in the Bible, but the end times aren't necessarily the end times of the earth and the people on it. The end of a major advancement or climax or whatever.
That's what David Hackett Fisher said. He said, these periods of economic, political, and institutional collapse happen every 300-400 years. He said, however, this wave of the Great Wave, he said that the function of change is greater than any wave before. All right. And he wrote this in 1997, and he said it hasn't resolved itself, but it will in the next 60 to 80 years. OK, somewhere in there, because that's how long it always takes. And here we are. So that's why buy gold, buy silver, have faith.
Right, well, in the immortal words of F. Scott Fitzgerald, one of his characters is talking to another and said, how did you go bankrupt? You had all that money. And he said, well, slowly at first and then quickly.
I know the feeling.
Yeah, we've all been there. Well, that's...
Oh, boy.
The price of success is failure.
Oh, I had so much money at one time, Kerry. I quite didn't know what to do with it. And I realized I didn't have to know what to do with it because I was about to lose it all.
Well, that solved the problem real quickly. Anyways, Darryl, what's your site these days? Dr. Schoon?
www.drschoon.com.
All right. I suggest you go there, keep a track of Darryl's latest missives, and we'll be talking to you again real soon. Hey, I know you got thoughts that Darryl's brought up a lot. You're going to want to share them with us. Email us, kl@kerrylutz.com. Make sure you go to the website, sign up for our free weekly newsletter. I'm about to shoot one out in the next day or so. I kind of have not been into it this week for obvious reasons, but I'm not letting election dysfunction get me down any longer. I'm moving ahead with our mission here. Darryl's moving ahead with his. This is just the noise that you're going to have to put up with. Darryl, this is going to last 10 years at least.
It will. You know, that book, The Fourth Turning, you know, that talked about this shift.
Exactly.
They said these periods in history last 20 years. All right. And Neil Howe, you know, Strauss died later, but Neil Howe said the fourth turning, the 20-year period, he puts it at approximately 2008 when the markets collapsed. So we've got a good 8 to 10 years to run. You're right. You got it. This isn't over.
All right. Well, we'll leave it at that. Just send us an email, kl@kerrylutz.com. Darryl, thanks for taking time out of your day. Hey, we'll talk to you again soon.
Yes.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.